Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Harry Heller. I'm an attorney with an office at 736 Route 32 in Uncasville, and I'm representing the applicant Parker's Place, LLC. At the conclusion of the public hearing last month, you asked Ben North to put together some figures utilizing his formula for determination of what capacity should be on a per bedroom basis for multifamily dwellings. That information has been assimilated. I'll let Ben make his findings to the Commission. I would just point out, when I reviewed his figures that work fine for the applicant and for this application, I would note that, in my opinion, the King Arthur's project that was used as one of the examples with more than a 3-year history skewed the numbers a little bit, and I'd point out that that's an older project and likely does not have the water-saving devices that are in all of the newer projects. So the numbers in King Arthur's were marginally higher than the other projects. But I'll let Ben make a presentation of his findings.
Thank you. Hello, hello. Oh. Wow, that's loud. If someone else wants to begin, I'll speak to it. As Attorney Heller had mentioned, we had looked at 3 different developments in town, that of Pondcliff, Village Crossing, and King Arthur, all with similar counts, or higher counts, I should say, than the proposed development, which, as you recall, is going to be 60 units of 2 bedrooms each. So that would be a total of 120 bedrooms. And for the most part, these developments share the 2-bedroom criteria. We wanted to, we as in the Commission wanted to look at these developments because although they're condos, they're very similar to the apartments and that the applicant is looking to develop. And the condo allows us to get a really accurate per capita usage, whereas apartments are typically metered as the entire establishment, so it's really hard to really understand what per capita usage is. You have to make a lot of assumptions. So I think this is valid data. We came up with an average per bedroom number of 45.1 gallons per bedroom, or about 90 gallons per unit. And this looks to me, just in comparing my numbers of other developments I've looked at, that these are probably not maximum occupancy units. Obviously when we do a capacity analysis, we're looking at a criteria where we have 150 gallons per day per bedroom, which is based on 2 people living in 1 bedroom, so 75 gallons per person per day. So I think that goes a long way in understanding the discrepancy between what we typically use as a design capacity based on the Connecticut Public Health Standards and the actual usage that we see in these developments. And so we obviously want to correct for that somewhat. And so what I'm specifically looking at is Exhibit I, that's noted in your packet that I included in the yellow folder. And so that baseline of 45.1 gallons per bedroom has a 50% or 1.5 safety factor applied to it, so it's roughly 68 gallons per bedroom, which finally comes to a total of 8,124 gallons for a 60-unit development, which is comprised of 120 bedrooms. On the next page, Exhibit J is simply an update to our sewer capacity allocation spreadsheet that I did for September, because this public hearing started in the last meeting and is continuing on, and so this includes not only the newer, lower requested amount of capacity, but the newer averages that are based on our monthly sewer flows. And then finally in Exhibit K, we have the publisher certificate for the continuance of the public hearing. So those are really the only new pieces of evidence that we wanted to have as exhibits in the public hearing. Certainly the applicant has done his due diligence and following our criteria, and has given this a closer look at the amount of capacity that he thinks that this development will use, and I seem to think that that's a fairly reasonable number. Again, assuming these are probably going to be 1 or 2 people living in them. You know, I wouldn't expect 4 people to be living in a development like this per unit, but you know, sometimes that happens. So it's always prudent on our part to be careful of you know, undersizing these types of developments, which is why we originally start with obviously the higher number, which is more conservative.
And just to go back to the testimony last month, when we came before your commission for an allocation for Bride Lake, we did that based on the 150-gallon per bedroom parameter. And you gave us an allocation for that project of 33,000 gallons, more or less. Based on the analysis that Ben has done, which is higher than what our actual usage is at Bride Lake, but using Ben's figures with the safety factor of 150%, we actually will need about 16,000 gallons for Bride Lake. So again, 8,000 gallons for this project and the 16 for Bride Lake would still be well below the 33,000 gallons that this commission had allocated previously to a local developer who lives in the community, who contributes his time to activities in the community, and who's a productive citizen in the community. And looking at your parameters for allocation, and I know your allocation is tight, in our opinion, this project is worthy of the allocation requested for this project. And with that, I'll be glad to address any questions the commission may have.
Okay. At this time, I would, I don't know if we should do public comment first or do questions from the panel first.
I do questions from the commission first.
Okay, so then let's move forward with questions from the commission.
Did anyone else want to first? I have, my first question is for Attorney Zamarka, and we talked at the first session of the public hearing about precedent surrounding transfer of allocation from one development to another, and I was wondering if there was an update on that.
I do have one, and I will be glad to share it with the commission since this is Attorney Heller's portion for his presentation. If there are any questions for him, I would ask that you give him his time first, and after I'll be glad to address.
Thanks for clarifying.
Anyone else with questions?
Yeah, thank you.
There are no questions. Thank you, Attorney Heller. All right, now is our public comment portion of the agenda. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment? And if so, please approach the podium. I'll ask again, is there anyone else that would like to share a public comment with the board? All right. Being done, Attorney Heller, would you like last word? Do you have anything else to offer?
Oh, I'll let Attorney Zamarka make his comments
Okay.
first.
Good evening, folks. Mark Zamarka, Waller, Smith & Palmer, Town Attorney's Office. As Commissioner Williams noted, it came up last time that Attorney Heller gave us essentially two alternatives for approval of the allocation. One, and please correct me if I'm misstating anything, Attorney Heller. One was that if the commission found that there was sufficient allocation at that time, I believe we were looking at about 12,000 gallons. That has since been lowered to 8. Then he would request for Parker's Place the allocation directly from the town's existing treatment capacity, and if there was not sufficient available treatment capacity, the request would then be for a reallocation or a movement from the Bride Lake project over to this project. I would, I guess, ask Attorney Heller to clarify that that is still what's being proposed. Okay, thank you. So we did look into this, and we do have a memo that we can certainly enter in the record.
Yes, please, thank you.
Without belaboring it, since this is a good page-and-a-half memo, it is the opinion of Town Council's office that allocating the capacity from one project to another is not supported by the enabling statutes, nor is it supported by our regulation. Essentially, the statutes give this commission the right to allocate sewer capacity, which is a resource that belongs to the town. As the commission knows, we have a little over 1 million gallons a day of available treatment capacity after you take into account the state allocations. And then it is up to this commission, as part of its duty, to manage and supervise the sewer system as to how best to manage that allocation. The statute under which this is being applied for is 7-246A sub A1. Not that that site necessarily means anything at this point, but the language is very clear that it is a request for sufficiency of sewer capacity for a proposed use of land. Now, this commission has always interpreted that to mean that the allocation went to the specific use of land proposed in the application. The specific use of land proposed in the Bride Lake allocation was for the 120 units of housing and affordable housing that's up on Bridebrook. That was filed by a separate LLC. Yes, it does have the same owner, but it is a separate legal entity on a separate piece of property for a separate development. Parker's Place is an application in another portion of town on a different piece of land for a different project by a different legal entity. Those are not equivalent. Yes, they do happen to be owned by the same person, the two entities, who is certainly a businessman and well known in this town. However, it is this commission's duty to properly manage the East Lyme sewer system. There is nothing in the statutes, there's nothing in the regulation that allows for reallocation or swapping. As we note on page 2 of the memo, in theory, this could conceivably lead to someone getting sewer capacity without ever having come before this commission. For example, if the Bride Lake, to use as an example, if the Bride Lake project had 50,000 gallons that was given to it, and 45 of that was unused, that could then, in theory, be given to a different project in town without anyone ever having filed an application to come before this commission. We can't create an alternate market for what is a very valuable and precious town commodity that is this commission's statutory duty to monitor and control. For the reasons we set forth in the memo, we do not feel that it is within this commission's statutory charge, nor any of the East Lyme regulations, to allow for an allocation of sewer capacity to be swapped or traded or reallocated to another project in town, especially when each of those projects has a separate and distinct a separate and distinct capacity allocation application pending. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Zamarka. Last word.
Again, for the record, Harry Heller. Given Attorney Zamarka's opinion, which we respect, that brings us back to the criteria for decisions enumerated in your regulations. And notwithstanding Attorney Zamarka's opinion that we cannot transfer allocation, I think the evidence presented this evening, based on Ben's analysis, indicates that there is going to be unused capacity in the Bride Lake project, which means that there is additional capacity available to you as the Water and Sewer Commission to allocate to applicants that come before you under the criteria enumerated in your ordinance, setting forth the parameters that govern the allocation of that sewer capacity. So with that being said, at the last meeting, or the last public hearing, we indicated to the commission that a substantial portion of this property is located within the sewer shed area. So it's in an area that you have determined in your legislative capacity should be sewered. It is also located within the coastal management area, and we pointed that out at the last public hearing. So the placement of subsurface sewage disposal systems within the coastal management area has the potential to degrade coastal resources and is not a policy that is fostered either by your plan of conservation and development or the state plan of conservation and development. And we also introduced evidence into the record at the last hearing as to how this allocation would be consistent with the policies and goals enunciated in your municipal plan of conservation and development. So we would submit to you that, notwithstanding Attorney Zamarka's opinion, based on an application for allocation of this valuable resource, this application satisfies the permitting criteria contained in your ordinance and is worthy of the allocation. So again, if there are any additional questions, I'll try to address them.
Appears there are none.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney. Okay, so let's see. And there was any public comment? I asked that before, and there wasn't any. I don't think there was anyone else who wants to comment?
Yeah. I have a question for Ben.
Okay. A question for Ben?
What I'm grappling with here is the very serious information in terms of the status of capacity here in town. And I'm concerned that we, at this point, do not have capacity to meet obligations for people who have been assessed but were like an opt-in situation, and that reserve right now is depleted. Right. And I think we have a responsibility to put an extra capacity from, a project that uses less or something once it's completed towards rebuilding our reserve. And I know we're working to talk with the New London, Waterford about getting additional capacity, but right now it's really troubling to me to be giving out more capacity when our reserve is so depleted. I wish you would comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your concern. I don't have another way to my knowledge of anticipating what kind of capacity we need to reserve for those ticket holders that you mentioned that people that we've already assessed that have the ability to opt in, and frankly, for other developments that we've already approved. I wish there was an easier way to do this, but I can't see it accepting additional capacity at this time or additional allocation until we receive more capacity in some way. And we could keep doing this and keep trying to squeeze more developments in and then hope for the best, but hope is not a strategy. So I share the concern.
Yeah, my concern is we can't give what we don't have to give, and
Right.
I'm concerned that we don't have it.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, we need to anticipate what we've already promised others before we accept new applications.
Curly, you all set?
yes.
For Attorney DeMarco, do we have the ability to, all right, we have a lot of capacity out there. We've approved certain developments, and now like his Bridebrook development's not going to use the capacity that we allocated. Do we have any way to go and assess all the projects that we've approved and their usage compared to their capacity allocation and take that back? So we're doing a guesstimate as we're putting this out there to the public, saying, hey, okay, we think you're going to use this much. Now, like, are the commons using their full capacity? Or, are they? They're not, are they?
But they become part of this average daily flow. So that the error corrects itself.
It corrects itself, but, see, I look at it this way. We're a business, right? We have capacity that we're not using. We have ticket holders that are not going to sign up, and we're not making money that we should be making when we could be. That's the way, right? And that's my mentality, is that as a commission and we should max this out. We should be, and then tell all the ticket holders, hey, you're taking a risk. If you don't pay your assessment and you don't opt in, then there's a chance you're not going to get your sewer when somebody else is willing to develop the land. And right, that's the.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so at what point do we juggle that, and what are the legal options? Is that doable?
The first part is definitely an engineering and boots on the ground question. You're welcome, Ben. I think from my vast years of knowledge and experience as an engineer, which is none, it seems that what Ms. Williams said about the usage versus the allocation, I would think it does play out in the average daily flow as far as that goes. Now, what that means in terms of what an individual project was granted, and remember, we've only had a very few of these applications to begin with. The first one we ever had was Landmark in 2012. And there have been, I think, a handful, maybe 6 or 7 total after that. So I don't know how you go back, how from an engineering standpoint, or from any standpoint, you would go back to other larger developments that have been around for a while and decide, what the capacity was, what their usage was, things like that. I don't know off the top of my head. That does not seem to necessarily be a way to deal with it, given all the unknowns. Again, that's a question for somebody who's a lot smarter in that area than I am. In terms of the legal ramifications, we have always held that someone who has paid their assessment on their property has the right to connect to the sewers, whether they do or not. If they have a working septic down in the beach communities and they choose not to connect until the system necessitates it, that's fine. But we have always held that if you pay your assessment, as Attorney O'Connell has said many times, you are a ticket holder and you are you do have the right to connect to and use the East Lyme sewer system. What we're dealing with here now is this application at this point in time, based on all of the numbers and all of the usage and all of the allocations that we have.
Any comment?
Yeah.
I understand the question you're raising should be, we'd be going back and seeing if what we have on the capacity allocations chart that been prepared, if we need to revisit item C and see if that should be reduced, because, you know, to refigure the analysis of what we need to have in reserve for those items is based everything on the 150 per bedroom or whatever. I'm just, you know, if that should be reduced. And as I was preparing to come to this hearing tonight, that thought had also crept into my mind. And if you add the for item B, and I'm on this sewer capacity allocation chart, item B, which you know, the Village Crossing, Orchards, the Main Street, and Brookside Apartments coming to the 41,259 gallons per day. And then the item C, which will be assessed and also with a goal towards sewering the Penn Avenue area. That's 174,347. You add that together, it's 215,606, and I just randomly say, well, what if that's too high? And I think, so like, what if I cut it in half? I mean, I was just playing with numbers. And that came to 107,803, and that's if you cut it in half. If you said we were 50% too high. And then I look at Landmark, the 118.4, that's, you know, through the courts and so on, we have to reserve that. And Nehantic Village, the 75,000, that's a different type of project, and I think it's way premature to say, oh, they're not going to need 75,000. I mean, I think we have to definitely keep that commitment. So that, those two, like is on the chart, come to 193,400. You take that away from the 211,000, I think is the latest 2-year running average. That leaves 17,600 gallons per day remaining out of the 211,000, which is the rolling average. And 17,600, even against the reduced 107,803, when I cut those things in half, we're still in a very serious shortage. And this is why we're, you know, approaching to try to get more capacity. But so I don't know if you want to comment on my exercise, but I was thinking of that, Dave, and, you know, in terms of, but even cutting it in half, we're still in a very serious situation. And I don't even know if it's reasonable to cut it in half. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but that's so very. I found the data on this very sobering. I don't know if you want to comment on my exercise.
So,
I would just say there's certainly different ways to look at this, and you know, we have used the criteria that I felt was the most widely recognized criteria, and if the commission wants to change the type of criteria it uses, we could certainly do that, but frankly I feel like it's outside the scope of this public hearing to try to figure that out right now.
And I agree. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, and cutting something in half is probably extreme. I mean, I can't imagine that your estimates were 50% off. I mean,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound logical.
Engineers are kind of risk-averse people too, so we like to have safety factors and we like to make sure our design is going to work. Maybe if I was in a different profession, I would feel a little more fast and loose with this, but
But there's a reason for that.
I want to make
Yeah,
sure
that's
that
all,
I'm not
you know.
I'm not underestimating what we're going to see here. And I think the methods that we have are good methods. Maybe they're a little conservative, but given the fact that we're consistently 80 to 90% of our available capacity, I don't think that that's necessarily unwise. So I stand by the way I make these calculations, but certainly ways that we could look at it in different ways if the commission wants to do that.
I'm not recommending that we cut it in half 50%. I'm just saying if we went to an extreme,
Sure.
we're still very short.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
that's a good point,
That's
too.
not going to
I mean, it's,
suddenly, we have a ton of capacity. That's
Yeah.
not where that's going. And
it would be pretty hard to make this negative number a positive number, and there would be a lot of things that I would feel uncomfortable about to do to try to do that. So I think the data is not perfect. It's never going to be perfect, and you can look at any kind of future growth projection out there and find holes in it. But I think this is the litmus test that we've been using, and unfortunately, it's the best that we have.
Attorney Heller, did you want to?
Yeah, if I may, and again, just looking at the raw data, historically, not just you, but everyone in the state of Connecticut has used 150 gallons per bedroom per day as the benchmark for design. It's antiquated. It bears no resemblance to reality anymore. And the analysis that Ben did bears that out. And looking at the newer projects like Bride Lake, that 47 gallons, based on the Bride Lake experience, is actually in the 30s. Applying the 150% safety factor to that data gets you to 67 gallons per bedroom per day, which is 45% of the traditional design criteria of 150. So I don't pretend to know how you've made the allocations of what's out there that the Water and Sewer Commission is committed to. But if they're based on 150 gallons per bedroom per day, I would submit to you that the empirical data simply does not justify that. Now, getting to Mr. Bond's question, in fact, you did adopt parameters as to the duration of your commitment on an allocation of capacity. And I understand some of these projects were before this ordinance was adopted, so they're grandfathered. But your current ordinance has specific duration parameters for the allocations that you make. The initial duration of an allocation of sewer capacity shall be 12 months from the expiration of the appeal period of such allocation, the initial allocation period. Before the expiration of the initial allocation period, the applicant shall apply for all necessary land use approvals for the proposed use of land and provide proof of such applications to the commission. Now, if that's not done, those expire. You're not committed to those anymore. When the commission receives proof that the applicant has applied for all necessary land use approvals, the initial allocation period shall be extended for a period not to exceed 18 months from certain parameters. And there are provisions for you to extend those periods on a showing of good faith progress. Again, I don't know whether or not any of that has been done. My suspicion is it has not. So these allocations that you may feel that you're committed to have regulatorily expired pursuant to the regulation that you've adopted. So again, based on the figures that were presented at the last public hearing, we feel that there probably is allocation that can be made without exceeding your capacity allocated from the City of New London. We submit that what we need is 8,124 gallons per day based on the 150% safety factor, and that can be accommodated within your existing capacity. Okay, thank you.
I have one
Sure.
question while you're up. And this is outside of the purview of this commission's decision, but you've mentioned it a couple times in your testimony about the consistency with the plan of conservation and development. I couldn't find, and again, this is curiosity. This is outside of our purview. What is this property zoned?
R40.
Thank you.
But the application is an 830G application, so it's under the Affordable Land Use Appeals Act, so that the empirical bulk requirements of zoning do not apply.
Again, just curious. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Any further comment?
I just have a question for Attorney Zamarka. Again, just to confirm, the individuals where they're assessed but not yet connected to the system, we have an obligation to have a reserve to address those people when, at such time that they either want to or need to, perhaps it's a septic failure, whatever, that we will have the capacity to take them into the system. We have an obligation. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
And is there some ticking, Attorney Heller, I mean, this has been long-standing. I mean, certainly, I think a lot of this predates.
No, and one thing to keep in mind, the duration period that Attorney Heller referenced is in the regulation, and the regulation does not apply to necessarily an individual homeowner. The regulation applies to development projects that have either more than 20 residential units or require more than 5,000 gallons a day in treatment capacity. So that would not apply to someone, say, down in Pine Grove. An individual homeowner down in Pine Grove who was looking to connect.
Okay, and just to clarify, the 118.4 for Landmark, that's, first of all, predates the regulation.
Yes, it does.
And so that's grandfathered, and plus, it's through
That
the
is Landmark is a unicorn. It is an outlier. It is the subject of a Superior Court judgment. It does not have an end date on it.
And the Mehantic project is within an extension in accordance with our current regulations, so that's...
Yes, I'm sorry, the Niantic Village, the Trachis project,
Yeah.
that was extended in March of this year. They asked the commission for an additional year to get their land use approvals applied for and taken care of, and the commission did grant that, and that expires, I believe, in March of '25.
And the additional capacity that might be needed at Village Crossing and the orchards and the items in plant Brookside. I think the newest thing is Main Street. I think that's a fairly new one. Any meter that's expired on any, I mean, Brookside, I'm confident is not expired. We've had much discussion about that, but can you speak to?
I don't understand the question, Ms. Russell, I'm sorry.
Well, Attorney Heller, I think, is questioning if some of the capacity that we feel obligated to, that may have expired, if they...
I do not know the status of any of the individual, any of the individual projects under subheading B. I'm not aware of those.
Okay.
I got one question for Ben.
Sure.
All right, what's the value of 1,000 gallons of water and sewer to our budget
Per day?
per day? right?
15
For every
bucks.
gallon that's going down the sewer, a gallon of water is
Say-
being purchased.
Well, let's say 1,000, right? So we deal with
Let's go with a
1,000.
round number, 1,000.
So
How much is
15,
that
16
to our
bucks.
ratepayers, to everybody as a whole? Is it there's not a profit, but a value which adds to our budget? What is that per 1,000 gallons?
Yeah,
That
so
we're sitting on thousands of gallons that
So,
aren't being used.
I think you're asking me what gross revenue is, so
Yeah,
I don't
per-
know
okay.
what our margin is on that.
Okay.
But it's pretty much zero, as you are aware.
So it's
There's not a lot of market.
There's really no
so
margin in
it's
this.
basically a
The more,
wash.
the more sewer capacity is not a boom of, you mentioned we're in business.
Well-
We're not even for profit business, but it's not some boom in revenue. Like we
But
think
it
it is.
generates tax money, it generates, it's a snowball, well, I'm just saying.
On the town side, we're representing the water sewer, on the town
Yeah,
side,
but
on
no, it's
the
a
water.
whole entity, we're all, this is a town, we're a.
I know, but this
system.
commission right here is looking
Okay.
at the sewer, so if we're looking at the sewer alone, that, for every, say, 1,000 gallons of more sewage, 45 cents to $1 is out the door already, because that goes to New London, Waterford, and then operating costs, so there is a little bit, but not a ton of additional revenue coming in is what I found.
I mean, I think we've basically been telling this commission, and hopefully you're aware that we pretty much have been operating at net zero margin for a long time, and now we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for a lot of these capital items that we'll be talking about in our rate discussion, where we're going to try to build up for some of those things. And certainly that could help, but I think, obviously no one could contest the fact that, yes, this is going to bring us revenue, but we also need to be cognizant of the fact that we've already promised this allocation to all these other entities. And so we just need to try to decide how we're going to deal with that. And if we want to use alternate calculations, we can certainly explore that. But I guess that brings me to my comment, just a little bit of a rebuttal to something that I heard Attorney Heller say, that I'm not sure that the 150 gallon per day number is antiquated. All I can tell you is that these types of developments typically don't have full occupancy. So I think we're really talking about two separate things, and we're trying to say, well, this number really doesn't make any sense because it's lower than the amount, but the amount is a design calculation that's based on full occupancy, as if this condo or this apartment, which is 2 bedrooms, is going to have 4 people living in it, 4 adults. And that's the design criteria, and that's what I think is a good design. And I had mentioned before, when we first started talking about the numbers that we had found, when applying a safety factor, which I still think is a modest safety factor, we come up with about 70 gallons per day. And it looks to me like, for the most part, this is one person living in these apartments in each one. That may not be the case, but I really don't know. I would love to hear if there's a better way to understand how many people are living in each one of these units that was coming from an unbiased source that we could get that information for. But the unfortunate fact is that there has to be some sort of estimate that we have to take into account, and this is the best method that I know of. But certainly if there are better ones, and we can look through different methodologies, TR16 or 10 states approval is also other design manuals, and we can look at what they have in there as well, but they typically require us to go with 70 gallons per person per day for design purposes.
Again, for the record, Harry Heller. I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
Just to get back to why it's antiquated, that 150 gallons per bedroom per day has been around as long as I've been practicing, and that's a long time. The traditional family size has changed drastically. Forget about water saving fixtures and all those things. The current family size in a 2-bedroom apartment or condominium is 2.2 people per unit. So there's 2/10 of a school-age child per unit, and that's regional statistical data. So it's not 4 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. The statistical data is it's 2.2 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. And that's why you see the numbers that you're seeing in the analysis that Ben ran. Those are good numbers. So again, I know this gentleman had a question.
So, to Ben's point, the design criteria of the building is still 4 people. The capacity for that building, 2 bedrooms, 2 adults in each bedroom, is 4 people. So even with that calculation, if we put it aside and say, let's use these lower numbers, we're still 200,000 gallons over with the calculations that we did already. So what happens if we send that extra 200,000 gallons to Waterford? We're paying that extra fee, and we're over our agreement with them because we exceed the 1.2025 limit per day. So I don't know that we can approve it even if we were using a lower number. We're still 200,000 gallons over.
That's a good point.
Is there any further comment at this time? If there's not, then, did you, yes?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If it looks like we're getting ready to close the public hearing, I just want to make sure we have the record intact. Ben had exhibits I, J, and K. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
And then my memo would have been exhibit L, correct? And those have all been entered into the record? Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure.
Thank you, Attorney Zamarka. And with that, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a second? All right. Any discussion on that? Being none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, public hearing is closed. So, then at this time, I'll gavel in the regular meeting, East Lyme Water and Sewer Commission, regular meeting agenda. And it is, let's see, what time is it here?
7:18.
At 7:18. Okay, so we called to order. Do I hear a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of September 24th, 2024?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion or changes or corrections to the regular meeting minutes of September 24th?
Correction, I was not here.
Okay, so let the record reflect that. Any other changes? All right, being none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? We already did that, right? Okay, can we discuss it? So all in favor of approving the regular meeting minutes of September 24th, 2024, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
There's one abstention. Okay, thank you. And now turning our attention to the public hearing minutes of September 24th, 2024. Do I hear a motion to approve the public hearing minutes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a question. Are we going to continue those meeting minutes to tonight's extension, or is that part of next month's record?
We'll have a separate,
That'll be second.
yeah, there'll be a separate record.
Okay.
Yeah. These are just for what transpired on the 24th. Okay. Any further questions or corrections to the record? Being none, those
Yes.
are good. Yep.
Again, I missed the public hearing.
Okay. So those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And those abstaining?
Abstain.
So the motion carries. Thank you. All right, do we have any public delegations that wish to address the Water Commission this evening? It appears that there are not. Correspondence log. Do we have any correspondence that needs to be brought up tonight? Okay, thank you. We do have a letter from Carol Russell regarding EPA water fluoridation ruling concerns. And we do have correspondence to the East Lyme Water and Sewer Commission from Village Farm Realty LLC regarding 135 Boston Post Road water meter bill. Okay. So those are our two items. What, do we want to take up the first one? Carol Russell, is there anything you wanted to discuss?
Just very, very briefly, because I don't think the commission members have had a good opportunity to read the attachments to the memo. But what triggered my memo was there was a news brief in the New London Day on September 26th regarding a decision in a federal court case that had started actually in 2017, and it was just recently resolved. And basically, a federal judge has ordered the U.S. EPA to further regulate fluoride in drinking water because high levels could pose a risk to the intellectual development of children. And the judge did caution that it's not certain that the amount of fluoride typically added to water is causing lower IQ in kids, but he concluded that mounting research points to an unreasonable risk that it could be, and he ordered the EPA to take steps to lower that risk through a regulatory review and appropriate regulatory action as determined by the EPA after that review. And so the information in your packet is the item that was online by Bloomberg News regarding this court case, and also I attached the first 6 pages of the court's ruling, which provided a good summary of the court case. The whole ruling is like 80 pages, but what I asked is that we get in touch with our Department of Public Health for some guidance here as to whether we should be reconsidering at all water fluoridation at this point, pending the EPA doing its regulatory review. So that's kind of what my memo was about.
Okay. Thank you. Carol, any comments in response to Carol?
I can just speak to the fact that after receiving Ms. Russell's letter and comments that I put a request into the Connecticut Department of Public Health for some more guidance, and I'm still waiting to hear back what their response would be. But I imagine this is fairly recent news, so it may take some time for that to be digested at the state level for them to give us recommendations.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, it's a big question, and certainly worthy of our looking into it and seeing where it goes. You know, we learn every day, right?
That's it.
Let's keep an open mind. And let's see, and then the correspondence from the, what was it, Village Crossing? I don't see, but it was in the packet.
Oh, I can speak to that. I didn't include it in the packet because it was actually something that Mr. Giusti had given me
Yeah.
the night of our meeting. So I wanted to include it in the log, but it was kind of dated material. But I am happy to say that we resolved the matter with Mr. Giusti, and I believe he's actually paid his balance in full.
Great, that's good news.
Yep.
Nice to have that resolved. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the next item, we're going to return to a discussion of possible action on a consideration of sewer capacity allocation to Parker Place LLC, located at Park Place, East Lyme. I think we've had a fairly thorough discussion so far this evening. We continue the discussion, or we can move to continue it to our November meeting, give everyone a chance to absorb and consider some of the information presented tonight. Do I hear a motion to continue item 5 until the November meeting.
So moved.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Okay.
I don't hear a second. All right, so let's resume discussion. We can pick up where we left off.
Yeah, pardon me, folks. One thing I would like to point out, Mr. Zoller, you mentioned you were not at the public hearing?
That's correct.
Okay. Have you had a chance yet to review and familiarize yourself with?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right, thank you, just to get that on the record. And just to remind the commission, I understand that there was no second to continue the discussion until next month. Just to remind you, you do have 65 days from today to make your decision under the regulation and under the land use statutes. So that 65 days runs on Thursday, December 26th of this year.
Thank you. So do we want to continue the discussion, or is there any interest in continuing it until the November date? All right, let's move, let's discuss it right now, we're here. Where do we start? Who would like to,
I'll start where I ended.
yeah, good.
I don't think we have capacity when we exceeded the, by more than 200,000 gallons, so I don't know how we can approve any additional capacity at this point. And I think that's where I'd have to lean until we can figure out where to get more capacity, or do we just exceed our capacity to London and pay the penalty if there is one?
Comment? I agree. I feel that our capacity situation right now is very serious, and that we can't approve what we don't have to give. And right now, we're in a deficit situation with our capacity, and we need to replenish our reserves. And until we figure out what's available to us and how, what, if we, what we can do in that regard, I don't think we have any choice but to not approve this request. You can't give what you don't have to give.
I got one other thing. Obviously, these are all statistical numbers. We did a calculation. They're not actual sewer flow, but we did approve those prior to this meeting with subsequent applications, so the numbers are there. And we've already exceeded the amount of capacity we have left to ship to New London. So I don't know how we can approve an additional capacity to the sewer system.
Any other comments? Any, Don?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go, for the record, for me, I honestly believe we should max our capacity out. And I believe we should use it all. And not, we're at a point here where now the ratepayers, I'm on the commission where we're sitting and doing ratepayers, everybody in the town is gonna absorb, everybody that's on water and sewer is gonna absorb all these expenses. And we're gonna be going back to the well time and time again for the PFAS and for the, so my opinion is the attitude should be the more customers, the better. And if we got to go for more capacity, or that's coming, whether you like it or not. That's, so we're just kicking this can down the road, and we're going to affect the fact that now he's got pieces of property that he can't develop. Nobody can now, basically, we're saying right here and now, anybody that's in our sewer shed cannot develop, right? Unless now, you just said that if you were building a single-family house, you don't have to come in front of the commission if it's less than 5,000 gallons, right? So now you're going to force him to go build single-family homes on these pieces of property so he doesn't have to come to this commission. And guess what? The numbers are the numbers. We're going to still have to give him sewer, right?
And for the record, I'm just trying to give you numbers.
I know, right?
I'm not making a
So
decision.
Well, when we started this, it's not relevant.
No, go ahead. No, we got to have a discussion.
When this application was brought to us, our responsibility is not to, it has nothing to, our responsibility is to manage our sewer capacity. It's not to restrict or encourage development. It is not to restrict or encourage economic growth, but to.
Yes, but that's what it does.
No, our limited
Got
purview
nothing to do
here
with us,
is
though.
to manage sewer and water resources. It is not to grow income. It is, we are managing a finite resource. But what I think is a misstatement is that a person cannot develop in this town if we, are not able to provide sewer. The attorney stood before us at the last public hearing and stated that part of the property is in the sewer shed, but part of it is not, and that they intended to investigate septic. We're not. Our decision does not. It informs their next steps, but our decision is not a moratorium on development.
I disagree, but
I
that's
know
fine.
you do. But now we both have it on the record. And for the record also, I like that we can respectfully disagree.
And to your point, we could put in some other form of sewer treatment. Doesn't necessarily have to go into the sewer system.
Right.
They could develop their own sewage like a lot of other developments have done around town that didn't either have a direct connection or they deemed it financially prudent for their project to just build it out on site. So it could be done, it's just a different cost. And we're not here to determine their cost or not. We're here to determine whether we have capacity. To Dave's point, we don't have capacity. We're already exceeded that number by 200,000 gallons if we look at just what we have on paper. So I don't know how we can approve any more if there's no place to send it. We could send it, but we're going to pay that extra charge because we're going to go over that 1.025 million gallons. Even if there's capacity at Rocky Neck and there's capacity at the prisons that aren't being used. We can't just take it that's already allocated. It's just like everybody else that's a ticket holder in town. They're already allocated.
Does this include
It is certainly is frustrating to know that,
Yeah.
we have to make these hard decisions,
Goes
but
out the
unfortunately right now,
across that?
it relies on us to make that decision.
And I know this point doesn't have anything to do with it, but I know that they did an evaluation of the New London Treatment Center, and we never got a report back that said they're at 10 million, they're at 11 million, they're at 15 million. We obviously own a portion of that capacity if they determine that they have more than they're actually saying that they actually have.
Yeah, they are at 10 million. They have a NIPD's permit that's published, and,
Right.
and that is what they're operating on. There was talk in the past of making modifications to the plant, but they really never moved past the concept phase, and so I think the time is now to certainly explore that a little bit more. But right now they're still at 10 million.
Is there any further, go ahead, any deliberations, more comments?
I gotta think that our situation is not as dire as we think. Then if we went back and applied your methodology to a lot of previous applications, we'd find there's a lot of sewer capacity that'll be unused. So I think the reality is we're not gonna overflow the London, but we do have to get more capacity and get this thing under control. I don't know where I stand.
It's a tough one.
Well, we're starting the process, we're just not there yet. We're having conversations, we just don't have an answer for you right now.
Any further discussion by the members of the panel? Any thoughts? Okay, so I guess this is where the rubber hits the road. Is there anyone that wants to advance a motion, either for or against allocating 8,124 gallons?
I'll move to deny the allocation of 8,124 gallons per day of sewer capacity to Parker Place LLC located on Park Place map 11.1, lot 11 on East Lyme Tax Assessor's mapping based on the application for capacity dated August 14th, 2024.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second that.
We have a first and a second. All right. Is there any further discussion at this time? Well, let's call the vote. Those in favor of denying the allocation and the motion as it was stated signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
We have 2 opposed. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. 2 against. The motion carries. The application is denied. All right, next on the agenda is billing adjustments and disputes. Apparently there are none. Approval of bills, there are none. We do not have a report tonight from the finance director. It's a light agenda, and I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to add.
No, I just, that we spoke that the next meeting, when we vote on our rates, we'll have a more in-depth conversation about last year's budget finals.
You know, we'll have a more robust conversation.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, discussion on the proposed water and sewer rates for fiscal year 25 and set the public hearing.
Yeah, I'd like to start with the sewer if we could. I did put a memo to the commission that was in your packet. As you're well aware, we have to post the proposed rates. Don't hold me, that's 10 or 15 days before the public hearing. The public hearing will look to be on November 19th, so that's why we have a proposal in front of you so that we can talk about it, so that you guys can say, yep, vote to go forward, and that's what we do, so we can post that. So with that being said, on the sewer side, I just want to kind of give you some highlights of how we came about with this, and just kind of highlights. When we did the budget, you guys approved the budget in April. We try to give an estimate of where the rates are going to be. And going back in time to April, we were looking at about a 6% across the board rate increase. We're doing pretty well, but one of the things that it kind of got brought up in the discussion, and we've been budgeting all these years to cover our operating, and we made progress. We had that big debt that we had that we've been paying down, as far as that, but paying back sewer assessment. But also, one of the good things that we've been doing the last years is starting to add money to capital. And on the sewer side, we have 100,000. On the water side, we have 200. Sounds nice, but it's not enough. So we really, like, when the audits come through and Kevin Gervais goes through these, you know, they book depreciation, which is about 800,000 to 900,000. So with that being said, even though at that time we really need to be looking at building up our cash, building up our capital reserve and stuff like that. So the 6%, even though we are tracking pretty well on our flows to New London, because the problem, we send flows to East Lyme, but New London sends, Waterford sends flows, and then London has their flows. And the way it all gets divvied up is depending on, like, say, if Waterford's is down and New London's is up and ours is the same, you still pay the percentage. So what I'm telling you is that we're doing pretty well right now with our bills, because we get our bills as we go along at the treatment plant, but that's a good thing. Any money that, because that one line item in the $2.9 million budget on the sewer side, about 1.1 million is just going out the door to Waterford and London. So my recommendation, it's one of the things I have in a bullet later, is I really think we should be setting aside as much money in a capital reserve to start building up that, to appreciate that money. Also, we're doing a really good job of paying down the debt. That debt started, as we all remember, for the people who've been here a long time, but $1.1 million. We're down about $324,000, and I'm hoping in the next 3 or 4 years that credit card bill is due. It's done, which is a good thing. We have some big capital projects coming down the pike that we were very fortunate this commission and all of us that American Rescue Funds was able to fund. On the sewer side, it was a $650,000 the Main Street pump station, and then we got some money on the water side. But we're really going to start kicking into some bigger projects. Broadbrook we've been talking about for a long time. We have a newer one that you might not have seen, underground storage tank removal. We do have some underground storage tanks that we have to start pulling. And then the night we talked, that whole incident at the with the force main down by Giant's Neck, and was a little scary. So from a force main issue, as far as the force main we're going to see under the Nyack River. So all this stuff leads to that. I think, and it's in the bullet items here, is that my recommendations. I think we should look to an 8% rate increase. It's not staggering. I mean, I'm a ratepayer as well. It's always uncomfortable to have these rates, but you know what? It's needed. I think we should be going with an 8% rate increase for this rate hearing. I think we should start creating that capital account. So the other thing is the treatment plant. Anytime they do upgrades in the London treatment plant, they actually make us pay for 15% of that. And we have not funded that in 3-4 years. We had $1.1 million in a kitty 3 years ago. So that money started to deplete, and we had to start setting money aside. We should hold on to the money and not give it to New London. We should put it in our accounts, but when they ask for it. So, the last of the thing, and I think it would hold true with what Ben talks, we're really going to ask, and I think it shouldn't be surprised we've asked about it before, but our recommendation, staff's recommendation, is we switch to having another rate hearing in the springtime, because we really have to look at this rate structure. We're really trying, but this is kind of has to be, we really have to address this irrigation stuff. We really have to address the wholesale on the sewer side. We don't have a minimum payment. There's a bunch of customers that don't use, they have the ability to use it, but they don't get charged a penny because they don't have any fees. So we have the rate sheet in front of you. It shows an 8% rate increase across the board. I'd like to see that the commission supports that, but we also really need to be looking at, come springtime, really, and what I'd highly recommend is working with the finance subcommittee. Ben and I will be working with you guys to really look at it. We talked to a guy that did some rate analysis and stuff like that, but just really look at how we set these things up, and what we need to do better with this so that we can evenly and make sure we have enough funding for the future for capital and stuff like that. So that's just the proposed rate increases I have on the sewer side. If you have any questions here, or else Ben can get into the water side. Yes. Sure.
Mark wanted to speak. Regarding moving the rate schedule discussions to the spring, phasing that in, I'm assuming that would also be on the water side as well, that we would
Correct.
be doing both. And how would that work in terms of the rates that we approve now? Then they would be good
Till the spring.
till the spring, and then
And then,
how would that?
and then going forward, the rates would be always, we'd have the rate hearings. It makes more sense. We're always setting a budget, and then we're setting rates, and then those rates don't kick in for 7-8 months. Where it's very lagged as far as our revenue, and it's very difficult. It's bad. We got to just with our 6-month billing thing, and we're trying to go to quarterly billing. We're just getting the revenue figures now for what we've done for the last 8 months. So we really need to, in our opinion, move that rate hearing up to the springtime, but also figure out this irrigation thing. I mean, irrigation's a big component. It's going to help and be a boon for water. It's actually going to be a detriment to sewer. So we got to figure that out. So I really would highly recommend the commission we work hard on this winter so that we're really set for the springtime of really looking at these rates. But so it's this rate hearing now. We'd have another one in the spring, and then out years we'd always have in the springtime, right, and coinciding with the budget. Which you set a budget, you set the rates. That's what they really should. You set a budget, you're already spending it, and now you had to find the revenue to do it. And oh, by the way, that revenue lags 9 months. It's not a good way to do business if you're saying running a business. Yeah. So.
Well, the thing is too is we sat in the committee and talked about this. I mean, I wrote down what for the sewer side we were talking over a 5-year window to get us out of to get us up and running. I wrote down a 10% increase. but etch it in stone for the next 5 years. Sewer's going 10%, and the water for a few years is going 12, 13%.
Well, so, that's fine, but what I was telling Ben is that
Us
if we're.
talking about it every single year and changing the rate, we should just say, hey, the whole town, sewer's going up 10%, water's going up 12% for the unforeseeable future. And then we gotta set our budgets on that. We're in the middle of the pack for fees for all, based on water. I think, where are we in water? We're low on water rates,
We're low
right?
in water
But
and
we're
high.
at the higher tier for sewer,
Very
correct?
high, yeah.
And so, but I mean,
I would agree with you, Dave. It just, all the things, if this commission goes along with what I'm saying, and the 8%, you guys, it's up to you guys. We could change this to 10%. It just, we're gonna come back in 6 months and relook at this thing, so we have another, because any of these rates that you put in now aren't even gonna touch the people until next May.
Well, yeah, and that, to Carol's point, I think meeting again and looking again in the spring prepares us for quarterly billing for some of these things, like minimum
Correct.
charge for 6 month period. We're gonna have to address that when we go to quarterly, so an update in the spring gets us in a place to
Makes
match
a lot.
that.
That's,
sense.
Michelle's, that's a
Yeah.
big part of why to go
for
to
the
spring
summer
meet
months, for the
is because we
the
have to change.
irrigation especially.
Yeah, we have to change this whole rate structure to gear up for a quarterly billing, which, really needs to happen, but it's probably looking more like next fall.
And then too, not to, that forced main break is gonna be a more common, that system's 33 years old, coming down. So that's gonna happen more often. And that was what, 40, 50 grand, I bet?
35, 40.
Right?
yeah.
So, and that's a unforced, right, and our infrastructure, we have not put money in the bank to upgrade our infrastructure.
Well, it's been hard
And it's
to.
gonna get us, it's gonna get us
It's
in
been
the
hard
end.
when we had $1 million debt.
Yeah, well.
We've been pouring the money, we've actually paid back 800,000 of the debt, so
Yeah, but
I
that's what I
consider
mean.
that as actually money we put to capital, because you have to pay your debt first before you reserve a capital, so we're getting there.
Yeah, but in the big scheme of things though, in today's day and age, we gotta charge more for what we're giving the public. We have to. Everybody else is charging more. Everybody, you can't, right? And it's one of those things, you hate to sit here and say that, I don't like paying taxes, I don't like paying a water bill, I don't like, right? But it's pay me now or pay me later. And I don't know, but
We all agree, and, I mean, the commission can go higher. I just know that we're gonna have another whack at this in the spring, that, we're gonna have better information. Once you start putting 10, in my opinion, you put 10, 14% rate increases, you're gonna catch some people's interest, which is fine. So let's have our ducks in a row. Like, the other thing I'd like to have on the water and sewer, and these guys are doing a great job of it, is like, the town always has a 5-year capital plan that they approve. We don't approve a capital plan. We should be approving a capital plan. This is the years that we're looking to spend these things. So because if you don't have that, it's hard to budget and plop when you need money. We're working towards that, and as I said, these guys in the last year have started to provide that. But up until now, we haven't had a capital plan like that we approve, like because you can take that capital plan and drop it into an analysis to know when you need the money. So if, say, if this Brybrook pump station is going to be, all realistically, 4 or 5 years and stuff like that, and you're going to need $5, $6, $7 million, you can just do the math of what you're going to be having. And the other thing that you have on the sewer side that you don't have on the water side is, we love to hear the finance subcommittee and this commission, but we have $4.4 million in sewer assessment. What do you want to do with it? You want to leverage it or use it? Because if you use it, it's going to go quick. If you want to leverage it, it's going to be a lot better probably, because the sewer has no debt. So you could leverage a few million, not
Yeah,
kill
but
yourself.
that originally was put in there for if we have to buy capacity. That was the way that was set
What?
22
Sewer assessment?
years ago.
Sewer
When I
assessment?
first got on the commission, that benefit assessment and all those assessment payments that were put in there was put in there for, at some point, we're gonna have to pay New London for the upgrades on the sewer plant. We're gonna have to, that money is, that's what that money is for. Not to leverage and not to spend until, that's our allocation money.
Well, when you say upgrading the plant, there's upgrading the plant to have more capacity, and then there's upgrading the plant.
Yeah,
Just
which we're on the
upgrade
hook for 15% of it.
Yeah.
And then we get whatever the plant's capacity is, we get a percentage of that.
Yeah, correct.
So
So-
that's,
so-
we should be pushing them to do that.
pushing them to do?
We should be pushing New London and especially the
Agreed.
state, because the state of Connecticut's the
upgrade
one
the
that's gonna
budget.
push it, yeah.
We are pushing them.
Yeah.
We had a
And,
meeting with
well,
them.
that's the thing is too, is that's why, like me, I sit here and try, I honestly know how this works. I sit in these meetings. The only way the state's gonna give us any more capacity is if we run out. That's the only way they're gonna give us more capacity. And then they're gonna give us, rather than upgrade the plant and spend money for everybody, they're gonna give us some of their state allocation to cover us until they get their act together and do something with that plant. That's the shell game, that's the chess game we're playing here, is the state of Connecticut's got 200 and something gallons, 200 and something thousand
205.
gallons of capacity that's sitting there that should be going to New London that isn't. Right? And we don't get a cut of it. But our sewer system's designed to take it.
I would love to get more capacity from the state. We just shouldn't assume we're gonna get it.
No,
But
the only way you're gonna get it is you gotta twist their arm. You gotta say, hey, we're out. What do you want us to do? Oh, by the way, we're gonna start charging, we're gonna set our rates, we're gonna charge the prison 3 times more than we do. I mean, now you gotta start to play that. All right, you guys are using our system, unfortunately, if you're not gonna upgrade the plant, we need to charge you more. Or you can give us some Iraqi necks. We need 40,000 Iraqi necks of the 70 that you're not using, that you're never gonna use. I mean, we're sitting on, we have the leverage and we don't use it. That's what irks me, is it's our sewer system. They're tied into our sewer system. And they're not gonna do anything. They're lazy. They don't do anything. They wait and wait and wait. And even the plant, they're just not gonna do it. We deal with it every day. When you're in the business and you see what they do and how they spend their money, how they waste time and money on these projects, it's frustrating, right?
It is frustrating.
So, okay. But I mean,
What would you like us to do?
well, I
with
don't
this
think right now
proposal right
saying
here?
that we should leverage our sewer assessment is a bad idea.
It's an idea, and
Okay.
you guys determine that.
Okay.
It is an idea, and you guys determine that.
Okay.
So when I say leverage it, you
We
can,
borrowed against it,
Well,
we dip into it all the time.
in the stuff they get,
Fair, Joe, just to clarify, what you're talking about when you say leverage, you take a loan out in the form
Against
of
it,
a loan.
use it as collateral.
Use it as collateral.
yeah, that, by leveraging it, if I wasn't clear, but in this thing, so I have projects coming down the road, $7.5 million for Brybrook Pump Station, $2.5 million for 94th Main, there's 10, and then another, so there's 12. You got 4 in assessment, so you're out of money, like, and with no reserves. So that's what I'm saying, leverage. We had to figure out how to best utilize the $4.3 million. And if I misspoke on the leveraging, it's like you're not going to be able to pay for all these projects with your cash. So some of it you're going to have to keep, but I think the commission want to keep a few $1 million sitting there because you're going to have something as a backup.
We've got a plan of how we're gonna do this, and we're gonna meet the next finance subcommittee, talk a lot more about sewer and sewer
Yep.
capital needs.
Now, what's stopping us from going to the town and bonding it?
Well, I know when we borrow, well, because the water department has bonded and you go to the town. The sewer has never borrowed money, so I'm not sure if I think the sewers, I don't know exactly, and we'd have to find out how the charter, but I think the water department and the sewer department act a little differently. The water department is a department of the town. Sewer is under the purview of the WPCA. So, but that would be something that attorneys or other people would have to tell us about bonding. But we've never bonded, which is a nice thing. We have $4.4 million in a sewer assessment, collecting 4.5% interest and no debt. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, but
But
we're still broke.
that sewer assessment cannot be used for
Yeah.
operating. And that's why we got in the $1.1 million hole, because we used it for operating. So we had to pay it back.
Yeah, we did that for years. We tapped into it for.
No, we didn't do it for years. We did it for 3 years
Yeah.
before I got here. It was a
Yeah.
$1.1 million bill. We didn't do it for years. We stopped doing that. You can't spend what you don't have in operating. That's why we actually have the budget here. So we have a proposal on the sewer side in front of you guys, 8, we could put 10, we could put 12, we could put whatever it is. I know that come springtime, we need to really look at these things. And I do know that if we start going down the road of doing irrigation rates and doing sub-meters, that's gonna have an impact. We're gonna lose revenue here. but we need to do an analysis, and we haven't done that analysis yet, so it's still a little early, so that's why I'd rather keep it the 8 now, but you guys we can propose 10 too.
I have a question regarding the proposal for creating a minimum rate for sewer. Would that apply to only people with hookups? Because we already sort of have a minimum now
yeah.
with the
You
rate
have, you have one in
schedule.
water, you have one in water, but there's an ordinance, the original setup on water said that it allowed it to have a minimum fee as an ordinance of the town. There's no ordinance of the town that says you can have a minimum charge of sewer. So it says it in here. What I've been told by the town attorneys is we're gonna have to have a, readjust or, redo the town ordinance on that. And that town ordinance means you have to go to the Board of Selectmen, you have to have a public hearing, you have to go through that process.
Okay.
And once the town lets you do it, then you can come back. But you just can't go against the town ordinance. The town ordinance says you can't charge a minimum fee to sewer. It's just based on usage. In water, it allows you a minimum charge. And that's why we've been talking about for years, and again, frustrating and some of that, but time is now. We gotta do these things, but the time is not the fall of 2024, it's spring of 2025.
Yeah, and like back to the sewer thing, all right, the sewer benefit, the sewer fund was accumulated by all the people that paid their sewer assessment, and a lot of those people aren't tied in. They're not tied in, they're not using the sewer, but they paid their assessment. That's where that money, and all the sewer benefit assessment, going up to the orchards, all that, those were all paid into that fund, and then here we are, they're ticket holders, right?
I think there were buy-ins. The people going up to there, they didn't all get assessed. They
Not
got
all of them, but
they got
anybody
assessed, but
that's touched their land or done anything since then
yeah.
paid their benefit assessment.
If they opted in, they had to pay it, but not everyone got paid. Not everyone had to pay as you went up Chesterfield Road, not Chesterfield Road, Boston Post Road.
Do you need anything from us on this proposal to move forward on scheduling the public hearing?
All I need to know is if you guys are good with a date. Are you guys good with November 19th, 6:30, and are you good with 8% or in this rate sheet? Because that's what you're gonna post. That's what we posted.
So 8% will get us to the next spring,
Yeah.
when we may have to change it again if we change the
Correct.
schedule for.
Eight will comfortably get us some extra revenue, because we're shooting for 6, but the 8 will help us get a little more revenue until we can figure all this out.
I'm good with all those things.
So if the commission's good with that, then.
Need a motion for that?
We do.
Public hearing.
Yeah, I think that you need a motion to set the.
We need a motion to set the public hearing.
I don't think we need a motion specifically to go with this, we can just go with it as presented.
Well, do we need to read this entire schedule into the record?
No.
Or we can just do it by
Oh, at the bottom of
preference?
the rate sheet.
I think you just do a motion to,
Yeah, we're gonna put this in the paper, the
Okay.
entire motion language, so at this point, we just need to notice that decide on a date and hope that we're gonna meet at 6:30 on the 19th.
Okay,
yeah, the motion would be to.
so just, we need to read the top part into the record. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second that.
well, we have to read the language. Just first paragraph. Okay,
As proposed.
Do you want me to read it?
yeah, do you have this?
No.
Just read that.
Yep.
Do you have a sheet?
Notice is hereby given to the public hearing to be held in East Lyme Water and Sewer Commission on Tuesday, November 19th, to consider proposed revisions to the rates and changes for connections to and the use of East Lyme sewage system. The hearing will occur at the East Lyme Town Hall, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue in Niantic. Immediately following the water rates hearing will be scheduled for 6:30 p.m. The proposed rates and changes are as followed, and it'll be published in the paper.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right. Do we have any further discussion on the proposed hearing? Public hearing. All right. If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, motion carries. And on to the next agenda item.
Well, you still gotta do the water.
What's that?
You still gotta do the water.
We can do that too if we want to.
You can do the same thing.
Oh, we have to do the same thing. I'm sorry, we got two.
I think the motion would cover discussion on both, but.
Well, we should just be, you want to do another one?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Do I hear a motion?
Notice is hereby given to public hearing to be held in East Lyme Water and Sewer Commission on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, to consider proposed revisions to the rates and changes for connection to and the use of East Lyme sewage. This one's the same sewage, it's not water.
No,
The rate sheet for water is on the,
It's the last sheet.
it's the last sheet.
There's a water rate sheet.
Oh, wait a minute, I give you the wrong one? Hold on.
Here.
There we go.
The last piece of paper is the water.
Okay.
We'll start over.
Your phone's gonna ring off the hook for 15%.
Notice hereby given public hearing to be held at East Lyme Water and Sewer Commission Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, to consider proposed revisions to the rates and changes for connection to and the use of the East Lyme water system. The hearing will be held at East Lyme Town Hall, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue. It says 6:30, but well, we're going to do them all at the same time?
Yeah, it'll be.
Yeah,
Or they'll
because
be
the first
following
one is
each
gonna
other.
follow
They're separate
Yeah.
hearings, so
Yeah.
one's 6:30 and one's immediately following.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Being none. Motion carries. Thank you for the help. Okay. All right, Chairman's report. I really don't have anything relevant that's new that I think we could report tonight. I did take a hike up the property we purchased up at Heritage, and that's over our aquifer, and just took a hike up there Saturday to take a look it over, and that's about it. That's about all I have. Okay, staff updates. Water Department monthly report.
Yeah, water department's been plugging along on some of its maintenance work. We've been painting hydrants, and we finished up our flushing for now since it's been very dry. I was actually informed that we're not in a drought condition, but we're in a dry watch condition right now. But we're going to keep monitoring that because it certainly feels like we're starting to get down on our water supplies. Our well 3 facility has been at reduced capacity since mid-August. But we're doing well with the system. We've been really proactive with going after leaks that we see, and we've been doing annual leak detection. So we've accelerated that from previous years, so that's been helping a lot. We're actually, oddly enough, we're only 0.01% off from our long-term running average from September, so happy to see that. That's a pretty consistent number. And we painted a great number of hydrants. I want to say we're almost at 300 now if we're including this month, so our staff has done a really good job of painting those hydrants. And it seems like a small thing, but I think it's really something that most of the public really doesn't see a lot of our infrastructure and what we do other than those hydrants on the side of the road. So we want to make sure they look good, and I think in parts the fact that we take pride in our system, and we're doing all the preventive maintenance things that we need to do, and we're continuing to increase our level of service where it's needed. So I'm really happy to report that. On the sewer side, because we are so dry, we actually had a pretty low flow month on the sewer side, and we'll just get to that. It was pretty notable. I think our overall average, including the state's flow, is about 850. And if we just are looking at our own flow, ironically, after our discussion, we only had 657,000 gallons of East Lyme's actual flow for this month. So it's a good sign, but it's also kind of in comparison to January, where we had about 300,000, actually a little bit more than that, 300,000 more gallons per day going through the facility. So obviously really important that we start working on some of our capital projects. One of them is I&I, inflow and infiltration, that I know we've kicked around a lot, and Matt and I have been working with the state to be put on the project priorities list for some of these capital items, so we can start to see what kind of funding is available to do those projects, but specifically the I&I study, which we're really seeing has a big difference depending on the amount of precipitation we receive in a given month. So, with that, that's pretty much what I had to report on those items. And then finally, a bit of unfortunate news, but good news in the grand scheme of things. Mr. Matt Garneau is going to be leaving us at the end of the month. I just want to really express my appreciation for all the work that he's done and the work that we've done together and all the projects that we've done, in a really short amount of time. Matt's been here about 3 years from when he came from Ty and Bond, and he's been doing a lot of the work that he excelled at Ty and Bond, and so I want to give it to him.
I want to thank you all and thank Joe and Ben, because it really has been a great past couple of years. We've got a lot done, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done, and we have a great team in East Lyme, and I was actually surprised with, quite frankly, how supportive you guys are as a commission. You've really enabled us to get a lot done in the past couple of years, and have been nothing but supportive. So thank you all for that, and I just want to really emphasize that I really cherish the time here, and I look forward to continuing to work with you guys. Anything that you need to get us through the next couple of weeks and make sure it's a smooth transition. But I'm sure I'll be seeing you guys in the future.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate your services. In the short time I've known you, I've enjoyed working with you, and I wish you
Likewise.
all the best and good luck
Thank
in
you.
the future.
Wish you well.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's see. So we got the water and sewer. Future agenda items, capital project subcommittee.
Yeah, so obviously it's time to meet with those other subcommittees now that I think we're at a good point with Finance Subcommittee, and just want to say I appreciate Dave, Michelle, and Roger, all the effort that you put in dealing with all these different metrics and numbers and figures I was throwing at you as we work through our rate analysis. And so what we're going to look to do next is it may be our sewer capacity subcommittee. We may want to meet next because of obviously the developments tonight and going forward, and some things that are coming down the pike in that regard. And then closely following our capital project subcommittee, because as Joe had mentioned, we really want to get a 5 and a 10-year capital project plan in front of you, so that we dig into the weeds with the subcommittee and then bring it to the full committee, and then we'll go back to finance subcommittee and figure out how we're going to pay for it. So it's I really actually like working with these subcommittees, because I think we get a chance to really dig into some of the details a lot more. So it's a concept that we're going to be doing a lot more going forward, so look out for that. And we need to put Lindsay on a subcommittee. I think the only one that didn't have 3 people was sewer capacity. So that would probably be where I would make my recommendation, but yeah, exactly.
They ain't never come
Carol
back.
and Dave are the only 2 on that subcommittee. Yep. Ken, Dave Murphy, and maybe there's only 2 on that one too.
Yeah.
Well,
That's fine.
you could do a coin toss if you want. Yeah,
We'll figure it
we could talk about that a little bit more, but
Sounds good.
out. Would be a
Yeah.
great addition.
yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you, everyone.